So I just wanted to know what was going through your mind when you created the program.
The kernel of the idea came from John Russell, who's a Langara College instructor, but he's also a globally significant philosopher. But he's the world's leading philosopher of sport. He's co-written Canada's premier biomedical ethics textbook and is a regular contributor to the world of academic philosophy. And it was his idea that, and I think it's wonderful that this came from a philosopher, that preparing our students to think as philosophers think and geographers think and sociologists and historians and all these other social sciences and humanities disciplines, training people to think is one thing, but giving them the skills to be able to take those thoughts and apply them in a real world context is an entirely different endeavor. And same on the social sciences and humanities. We have been profoundly poor all over the world, all through our disciplines at training people, except in the places where there are very practical jobs that one could go get. But so John had this idea that we wanted the language that he was using at the time, and I'm still using it a little bit, although it's not as good for marketing, is we wanted to develop literacies. We didn't need mastery. We needed literacy. We needed people who were financially literate, not masters of accounting, but financially literate. We need people who are ethically literate, not masters in ethics, but ethically literate. We need people who are skilled in logic, people who have an understanding of computers, technology, social media, business processes, the form of government. All of these sort of real foundational notions that our society is built on, we need people to have those, and then we need people to have these skills that allow them to take those and make them real in the world, because sooner or later you encounter these things. So it was actually over a dinner with John and his wife and me and my wife that he presented this idea. He had tried to get something going at the college about 4 years before that, but it didn't really go anywhere. And I said, I think we can do this. It's all in the way that we present it and package it. And so I said, let's try. And we started getting together and we started developing a curriculum. We started developing our program learning outcomes, which is really the crux of the whole thing, is what do you want at the end of this? Piecing together what would the necessary components of this be, and can we make it fit within a 2-year diploma, which is a bit of a challenge, I have to say. But at the end, we came up with DASH, and it was a real moment when actually we came up with the DASH acronym, because it really was, we thought, communicative of what we really think this could do for people, which is help them integrate into the working world. But with a rounded set of skills, not just a specific set of skills. So we saw two ways that students could go through DASH. One was with the intention of laddering into a program in university, and we thought that's great. We'll help students get into those university positions, and the skills that they're going to take with them will forever be an advantage. So graduating with a history degree, but you've also done some accounting, you've also done some business entrepreneurship, you've also done these other things. That makes you very competitive, I think, because a lot of people are not being hired as specifically historians. They're coming into small organizations, they're doing consulting work, and they need to have multiple skills that may end up working by themselves. They need to have those skills in order to be able to proceed. So DASH ended up with 4 elements that really rounded this out. So one was a foundation in social sciences and humanities, with the opportunity to specialize in the particular discipline area of your interest. The second then is those specific skill courses: accounting, business entrepreneurship, computer applications. Then the application. So I give students the opportunity to practice. So this is where Geography 2275 and Environmental Studies 2100 come in as a standard curriculum course, where the students work on a project for the entire term. And then the final one is DASH 2199, which is where it's seen as being a capstone. It's not quite the right word to use. It's a final project, but in that the students work. And in fact, I have my first group of students working on their final projects this term. It's a small group because they're the first ones to reach the end of DASH. So there's 5 in total. One student is working on developing a socially inclusive DJing workshop or summer camp for kids in an area, in a field that has been very exclusionary. and working on the social benefits of that. And then another student is working on helping Hazelmere Golf Course develop a better waste management plan for their catering operations. And then the third group of students, just this afternoon, we actually finally cemented the project. They're going to be, we don't really know the deliverable on this one yet, but they're going to be working on helping the City of Vancouver and Vancouver Coastal Health develop policies surrounding the new plan to open our parks to drinking.
So this project proposal will be implemented as well?
No, so what it is the students create the proposal, they give it to the City of Vancouver. The deliverable at the end of the term is a consultant's report of some form, so not a standard term paper, obviously. The agreement that we create with our partners is that this is a student project. We don't guarantee the outcomes. It's to facilitate the student, but there may be something of this that you can take away and implement. That's up to you, but there's no requirement to implement these things. We can't quite do that at the end of second year. Fourth year students, perhaps, but we're not quite at that stage. That was a real kind of nut to crack in this, was what reasonably can we expect students can perform after a 2-year diploma as opposed to a 4-year degree. We do think in the long run, our students are competitive against some of those people who are graduating with things like history degrees, because they have those skill sets that those history graduates probably are not going to have. So the final element is the e-portfolio, and the e-portfolio is the opportunity for students to pull together a portfolio of the work that they've done, the things that they're interested in, their successes, their challenges, the things they've overcome, their areas of interest, work that they've completed, put them onto the web as a sort of a calling card. But also really the hidden advantage of this is that the student thinks through who they are, what they're interested in, what are their skill sets, what are the things that they're wanting to pursue after DASH, so that they're equipped to write a cover letter, do an elevator pitch if they have that opportunity, perform in a job interview. They're not scrambling to find answers to questions. They've already considered those questions so that they're prepared. So that's so the two pathways out of DASH are, one is to ladder into university, and the second is to try yourself in the work world. And I just got a testimonial from a student who is not even going to complete DASH because she's been hired into a job straight out of the program, and she attributes her success in getting that job to the DASH program. She might come back, maybe there's time in the future, but she got the job even before the program ended. DASH doesn't prepare people for individual specific careers. There's not one career that DASH leads into, so we have to be very creative in our advising to help students get the courses that they need in order to be able to either do that transfer as successfully as possible or as completely as possible, or get the courses they're going to need to be hired into the industry that they're looking towards.
One of the things that I really appreciate is the arts engagement. This is such a critical component to connect to our imagination. What are the things that you doing in your DASH programs to connect the students who normally come from non-arts discipline to really cross over what you did, something like that?
Yeah, that's a super interesting question. So at the moment, we do not have the formal channels for that, except that we have a general ethos that we want students to be broadly engaged and broadly interested. One of the students who's at the end of the program and is working on a project this term has actually switched out of DASH. She's no longer officially registered in the DASH program, but she's going to finish the program nevertheless and get the diploma. But she switched to design because it was through DASH that she was exposed to the design program, because we brought a designer into the class to talk about design. And that just completely captivated her. And she's now a design student, even though she's going to finish her DASH program. So there's absolutely, I think, space for us to grow and to formalize the introduction of the arts and fine arts into DASH. One of the conversations I had at the moment, that we've got a little bit of a institutional barrier to this, which is that it is social sciences and humanities, and fine arts is not under that heading at Langara. I want to work on changing this. So I'm actually thinking of taking the DASH model and seeing if we can just apply it outside of social sciences and humanities and just lend it to these other disciplines. Because one of the best conversations I had was with our head of art history and religious studies. And she came into our class and gave a presentation on design and its role in culture, which was so fascinating. Yeah. And she really, really got what DASH was trying to do in that presentation. It was most interesting. So when I had lunch with her, one of the points she made was, I so want this program for my students because, you know, so many students come and they get jobs in art galleries. And it's like, they're like the only employee, there's 3 employees. They're called upon to do various different tasks. They need skills beyond just curation. One of the roles is, in fact, giving people in the arts, I would hope, the opportunity to round out some of those skills they need. Because there are so many artists who never get their work into the world because they're artists. They can't manage or can't see their way to those mechanical processes, relationship building, strategizing, marketing, all of those types of things they're not trained in, and getting some skills in those regards. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that the accounting for most artists is on the weak side.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But I do think very much that an education that lacks the requirement to think in a creative way is really robbing a student of an opportunity to see things differently. And we see this all the time in DASSH, and I think, James, you can attest to this. We kind of bring people into the course and we sort of set them there and we just want to see what happens. We don't really have an agenda. We think that emerging from these free-flowing conversations are going to be the connections in these. And I think, James, you're indicating that you kind of saw things on a broad arc through the term, these themes that kept coming back and seeing them through all these different angles. In that sense, I think there's no real separation between art and social sciences. You have to be able to see with the non-linearness of the arts in order to be able to truly see what's going on with the social sciences and humanities. You have to be able to see across disciplines. I'm an artist I'm an academic and an artist, so I feel very comfortable flitting between totally disparate things and trying to see what connects them. And I got to say, my art is all about what connects things. That geography as a discipline is all about not seeing the things, but seeing what connects the things together.
Colin, that you are behind this freeway. I would hear your process. That moment you make a meaning. You know,
I scrubbed this from the TED Talk, but I had actually talked about the sort of the moment of creation in that, in some of the early drafts. It came to me while I was lecturing to my students. I just kept seeing in my mind, because I was using Google Earth images to show students. I do a lecture on movement in an urban context and the role of cars and the paradoxes that cars present to us. And I would be showing my students freeway infrastructure, talking about it from an infrastructure perspective. But in my mind, I kept sort of seeing the beauty of these shapes. It's a beautiful ugly. They're horrid things, but they're beautiful in their shape. And so in my mind, I don't know where the inspiration came from, but my mind started knitting together a world. And in the early incarnations of this piece, I was actually using the Google Earth imagery to knit together a picture using the actual images. I actually ran into a technical problem there where the computer simply could not handle the size of file that I was trying to create. So that's why I went to the vector modeling and used Illustrator. And then that actually opened up all the coloring and the reshaping of things and really actually opened up the art side of it. Because I continued along that journey for a while, but the frustration I was feeling was that the only art was in the creation of the connections, where this has changed now. And in fact, even what you're looking at now, it has changed even since then. It's still evolving as a piece. It's too big for me to complete quickly, so it keeps evolving. But I actually have a whole bunch of other pieces in the series that I've got one that's entirely made out of container ports. I've got one that's airports. I've got one that's railway tracks. I've got one that's suburbs, and I've got one that's downtowns. None of them are complete, but somehow do a little less work, I'll actually get to the point of being able to complete these pieces.
It's interesting. You said that you had the lens of seeing things through the connections.
What lies between is the term I like to use. Geographers look at what lies between. And I hope that's the theme that people take from seeing this is, I hope that they find as I said in the talk, I don't want my ideas to be your ideas about this. I want you to find your own ideas.
I loved it, in fact, that it really encouraged us to see what emerges out of the invisible. So that
Thank you. I wish I had talked to you before I did the talk. That would have been a nice thing to include.
No. I was really taken away. And
there is something in seeing, particularly, that triggers different thoughts than reading per se. You know, one of the I'm not diagnosed officially, but I do believe myself to be dyslexic. One of the characteristics of the piece is that it causes your eye to dart from place to place. In some ways, the eye does not come to rest, although I did want to give, if I didn't have the roundabouts, there was no rest for one's eye. And I felt that was cruel to people to do that. And it was also sterile. I went for a long time without any of the roundabouts, and there was something about the piece that bothered me, and there was a sterileness to it without those. But keeping one's eye in motion is one of the things that I'm really interested in, and coming to this art has been the place that I've come to through the stress of COVID. I put on my music and I immerse myself in art, and sometimes it becomes a place of tremendous thought. I'm not particularly successful at turning it into a place of Zen absence of thought. But at least it gives me the opportunity to be completely free-flowing in my thoughts. And it's often where I come up with the solutions to problems I'm struggling with at work. Sometimes it's the artistic problems I'm struggling with in the piece. But it is in doing the art. I kind of need to have two channels running in my brain at all times. And if I can have the art being one of them and music being the other, that seems to be my happy place for creativity.
What music, may I ask?
I'm very much a classical person. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been exploring not often listened to world of 20th century classical music and 21st century classical music, which is brilliant, but unheard for the most part. But then I also go back and I love the Renaissance. And yeah, and I gotta say, some of that music has been very present with me through the creation of this. Carolyn Shaw's Partita for 8. Do you know that piece, James?
No, I've heard the name. Though.
I encourage you to this is transforming what music is, in my opinion, and pushing the human voice to really interesting places. Caroline Shaw, if you're interested, SHAW. Partita for 8 voices. Some of it is I take consolation in that I'm helping to solve these problems by presenting them to the world. By being an educator, I get some joy or peace, better word. I get some peace out of that. So some of it is I contextualize it and go, there are people suffering out there, but there's also people helping those people suffering. Some of it is the world is sucking right now, really bad. The world just sucks right now. We're in, and I do worry for young people today. I think it is a harder world to be in than the world I grew up in. I think the world is an anxiety machine right now. I think you are entitled. I think not only entitled, I think it is okay to not take on everyone else's difficulties. In fact, it freezes you if you take on everyone else's difficulties, and you can't be a help to the world if you're frozen. So if you are finding your place where you are contributing to the world and contributing to the betterment of people, I think it's an okay thing to allow yourself to feel that is what you can give, and that if you're not healthy as an individual, you won't be a help to the world. And so being healthy and keeping things in balance and not taking on every problem is a big part of it. Another part of it is that I have been able to compartmentalize to a certain degree my work from my life. And having things like art has been a big opportunity, and I'm a golfer as well. It's an opportunity to turn a switch and not think about those things for a time. Having other pursuits allows me to just, and having boundaries between work and life allows me to turn those off. And there are times I can think to myself, that's a work issue. I'm not going to deal with that right now. I'm much more important to be present to my wife and myself and recharge my battery so that I can go back into the world and do things. COVID really was a punch to the gut because the amount of work just went through the roof, and I got very burned out and somewhat quite depressed actually last year for a period. This connects to the previous point that you made. It's that I haven't been able to do this job, this focusing on DASSH, the way that I needed to, because I felt I needed to give in other areas. And so I kind of ripped off DASSH to a certain degree by taking on other responsibilities. And it's been fine. And it's all worked out really well because now I've got this first group of students that are coming to graduate. Now I've got a complete program. Now we can go in and we can improve that program, but I know it works. we've got the proof positive when these students graduate this term. Now I can look back on that and go, how do we make this a better program? How do I scale it up? That's the other problem I've got is that DASSH is really going to start growing in the fall, I think.
That's so exciting.
It's very exciting, but I can't do it all on my own.
Yes. It's like a concentric circle that you cast stone, and it's always going infinitely grow, because it's already handed over to students, and then they are connected to their sense of agency, skills, and also one of the projects that we are doing here, the Emerging Elder, we are focusing on the change, the evolution of us. So capture that what turns on, what keeps us constantly
flourishing, thriving.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one of the principles that I have taken on later in life, but didn't earlier in life. And that is that I hold on to my beliefs with a light grip. I formerly was quite religious and held on to those ideas very rigidly. But when those ideas started undermining some of my relationships, when I realized that they were making me ingenuine in some of my relationships and the ways in which I met and introduced myself to new people and my intentions for what those relationships would be, I found a real disjuncture in that did not jive with who I saw myself as being. I kind of want to warn the world against all of this. I'm of two minds about telling people not to compromise. There are times we absolutely must compromise, and it is the best way forward to compromise. I think we should always question our convictions. And the harder part in that is be willing to change your mind, which I think is actually the thing that is our greatest impediment in many ways, is that and I honestly think that's social. I think that is the fear of embarrassment, that you have committed yourself to being one thing. Now you have to go out into the world and say, oh, by the way, I wasn't right. I kind of connect back to the sociological theory of Norbert Elias on being what it means to be civilized. And part of being civilized is that our fears have gone from the natural things in the world that would kill us, like bears and weather and starvation, to social. Our greatest fear is now social embarrassment, that our performance as a member of the social group is the thing that we are most concentrated on. And I said earlier that I'm really worried for young people today. That's because young people today are constantly putting their thoughts into the world for people to scrutinize. And it makes it very difficult for them to change and become first of all, it makes it very difficult to be themselves, but then it makes it even more difficult to change oneself. I'm so glad there's no record of 99.99% of the things I've done on this planet, not because they were wrong, but because it's like, oh, I don't do that anymore, or I don't believe that anymore, or I've got a better way of doing things. And you know what? In the future, I might have still a different way of doing things. So being in a state of constant evolution is something that I've come to peace with. That has helped me. I don't get all rankled anymore when something is opposing what I think should be. Resilience is a great word. In fact, John, the guy who had the original idea for this, he wrote an important paper in philosophy on the notion of resilience and the importance of resilience. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, had a real impact on me. I can't even remember all of the things that he talked about in that. And you've read it as well, James?
Best book I've read.
There's a lot in that. The key point being find meaning. No one can take that away. It is the greatest impediment to individual thought, I think, that the world has right now. How are you going to form your own ideas if you always are getting your ideas from other people on the internet? Sherry Turkle talks a lot about this. She's concerned that the immediacy of social media, the constant presence of social media, creates a different dynamic than existed previously, which is we are not left alone with our thoughts and our feelings. You have to have time when you are alone with your thoughts and your feelings. You have to have times when you process through that and you don't go look up how to process this feeling or what do people do when. That it is in the working through. It's not the brilliance of the solution that we come up with. It's the process of working through the solution that is the key issue. It is the generation of, it's like DASSH. You have to generate the skills. You can't just get the answers. You have to generate the skills to be able to come to those places of working through whatever problem you're encountering. And that's practice. Always trying to find the answer. It's, you know, cheating is endemic right now. And it's like, I want to find the answer. It's like, work out the problem. That's the skill you need, is work out the problem. Don't just be given the answer, work out the answer, which is a big part of what DASSH is all about. In my applied course, as much as it is really difficult for me to do this as an instructor, there's times I go, I'm leaving, figure this out. I'll come back later. If I'm constantly giving my students the answer to problems, that's a problem. So the internet is out there. You have to have time when you alone are working through your problems. I would also say, you know, in terms of general advice for the future to the young generation, it is not the number of relationships you have, it is the quality of the relationships that you have that is the issue. And if we follow the advice of now deceased beloved geographer Yifu Tuan, he really makes the point of saying that you need to have individual people in your life that you will listen to them saying who they are. That's the first rule, is to listen. And to whom you can say who you know yourself to be. You don't need many of those relationships in life, and you're not going to find those through, that social media is probably not the place where those relationships will exist. It's about developing a quality of relationship. This is what solves the loneliness problem, I think, is having, it's not how many people you know, it's not how close people are to you in proximity. You can be with people and lonely. It is the quality of the relationships that exist with those people. And I really think that social media is really promoting high volume, low quality relationships. I get to know their aspirations. I get to see light bulbs turning on as new ideas come to them. I love doing student advising, seeing where students, alleviating someone's anxiety. There is no greater joy in the world than that. Hey, you can make it to the end of this program. Oh, this is great for you. Hey, you are talented. Look at that. Look at what you did. And right now it is so needed for people to have their anxieties alleviated. So I get tremendous joy out of that. I think my wife and I are propelled by the same things. Neither of us has particular interest in money at all, but I've never oriented myself towards trying to become rich. I thought about maybe fame, but I really am shying away from any notion of that at this point. I don't want it. I don't want the intrusion. Fame is just an intrusion into your life. I have decided that I want to make significant differences in a small number of lives. And in the future, that will ripple out and that will do great things. And I'm content with that. I want to be kind to the people that I'm in a relationship with. I want to bring art and beauty to the world. And I want to make people think. I don't really care too much the content of what they think, but I just want to inspire people to think. Because I don't think we're going places unless people are thinking. And I trust people enough that they will have good thoughts if they're truly thinking. Yeah, I'm so privileged. I get to make art. Yes. I get to talk to students. I have absolutely nothing to complain about on this planet. My contribution to the solution is I hope I'm sending people into the world who will take with them good skills and good thoughts. I had an incredibly optimistic and good-natured mother. I had the same for the father. He's now passed away. But my mom is just an incredible bundle of energy. And she's so riddled with common sense that it's ridiculous. So uncommon how much common sense she has. So common sense is part of it. It's like, you know, if it's causing me mental anguish to think too much about what's going on in Ukraine, stop thinking about that. If you feel that you have a burden that you owe to the world, maybe somehow you feel that maybe every problem should be solved or something like that. I'll solve the problems that are within my reach as best I can. And trust there's lots of other people out there who will solve these other problems as well. But no one is brought advantage if I'm spending my life racked with guilt and anxiety. Finding some of those things that bring you joy and indulging in those things or allowing those things to be part of your life, everyone needs that. So if we think about what separates traditional cultures from we might broadly call popular culture, or mass society is probably a better word. And we all live in mass society. If you're a young person growing up in a traditional society, what you are to become, who you are to become, the identity that you're to carry, the people that you're to relate to, the job that you might have, the spouse that you might marry, the religion that you will follow, all of those things might be predetermined. And there really isn't a lot of opportunity for you to do anything else. If you fit with that, that's the best world ever. because all of those difficult decisions have been made for you and you get along with it. And that's great. It's a wonderful world for you. If you're a person who doesn't fit with that world, that your sense of what your identity is different from that, that's a hell. You're not going to marry the person you want to marry. You're not going to follow the beliefs you want to follow. You're going to be at odds with the career that people have chosen for you. You're not going to accept the gender identity that has been passed along to you, or the family identity, or the caste that you're in. By contrast, in the modern world, we take young people and we say to them, go find out who you are. You can be whatever you want. You can have the religion you want. You can have the partner that you want. You can have the sexual identity you want. You can have the personal identity that you want. You can have the job that you want. You can have the career that you want. That puts students into that puts them into my piece of art. Everything is a confused mess of decision-making. What direction am I going to go? Decisions are stressful. We've added a whole heap of stress onto people's lives by telling them, figure out who you are. Mm-hmm. With no easy answers, no falling back on your culture. In fact, we're criticizing culture all over the place for what it is. By contrast, if you're a person who wants to form your own identity and you don't fit with the mold and you've got strong personal senses of what you are and you want to pursue a career that no one else thinks you should pursue and you love someone that no one thinks you should love, this world's perfect for you because you get that autonomy. And I think more people don't know what they want to do than do know what they want to do. And I think young people today are actually feeling around for some kind of cultural anchor, certainty, home base. But we are deciding, and for really good reasons, to toss absolutely everything. Sorry, that's my mother calling. So I think we are creating the anxieties by giving people really nothing firm to fix themselves onto and telling them that they've got to make all the decisions as to what it is they are, what it is they're to become, what it is they're to pursue in life, all of those things. It's just super mega stressful. Why has adolescence strung out into people's 20s and 30s? And it has, in a lot of ways. There are behaviors now that people in their 20s and 30s have that maybe, Kiko, you feel the same, that it's like, oh, we didn't do that. We were expected to do this, that, or the other thing by the time we reached 20, whatever years old. My education was a perfect example of that. I did 4 years straight up, 5 courses a term, completed a degree in 4 years, and I never thought there was another way of doing it. Totally not that way anymore. 3 responses to that. One is I need to pick up a camera again, because I got into art through the camera. For various reasons, I got into doing this other art and it kind of consumed my time, but I really need to pick up the camera again. I don't know if you saw my fireworks series. So I want to do more abstract art. It's just abstract photographic art. So that's one thing. Number 2, I want to bring the Freeways art and the associated other infrastructure themed pictures into the world. I have other projects that I don't feel I can take on because I'm so far behind in completing this one, but I want to start thinking of new projects that I don't really know what they are yet, but definitely finish those other infrastructure themed ones. I so appreciate you taking an interest. Thank you, James. Kiko, it was such a pleasure meeting you. I love you at the very beginning. You explained what your organization does, and I'm intrigued. I'm super fascinated that you would start that. That is such an amazing and wonderful thing. Please.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the interest, and I enjoyed the conversation very much. Thank you.
Have a
good day.
You too.